Hi guys, I am going to go over chapter 16. It's going to be very fast paced. There are no diagrams on this test, so I'm sure that you'll be happy about that. But I was wanting to just go over the things that you needed to know about the urinary system, so let's begin. Okay, so your major structures of the urinary system is your two ureters, your one urinary bladder, and your one urethra. Okay, those are the major structures of your urinary system. Okay, so the kidney functions, and make sure you write this down. Your kidney functions, they maintain the body fluid composition. Okay, so they help maintain that blood plasma volume and the composition within a healthy limit. And what do I mean by healthy limits? Your body always has to be in homeostasis or complete balance. Okay, it also helps with the maintenance of your blood pressure. So if you're holding on too much fluid, or if you don't have enough fluid in your body, and you're dehydrated, that can obviously affect your blood pressure. Okay. Um, it also will stimulate the RBC, which is your red blood cell formation, when your oxygen levels fall below homeostasis, which is that balance. Okay. And it also regulates the blood concentration of your Ca2 plus. Okay. I'm going to keep moving forward. Okay. So with your kidney functions, it does do the conversion of your vitamin D, but there's three primary nitrogenous wastes. Okay. Um, the one that I need you to focus on is urea. And this is the removal of the amino acids. And what happens is it results in the formation of your urea. Okay. All right, going to the next slide. So urea is the most abundant nitrogenous waste in your urine. Okay, not saying it's the only one, but it's the most abundant one. Okay, moving on. Also, your creatinine, that is a waste product of your muscle metabolism. So, I know we were talking back in the muscular skeletal system about when you're working out really hard and you have the sore muscles, and your muscles will give off those proteins and the creatinine and things like that. Which is that waste. And so it has to be filtered, which is where the urinary system comes in at. Okay, we're going to keep going. So your kidneys, they are reddish brown. They're bean shaped, not very big, but they're both on both sides of the vertebral column. Um, but where is that at? So it's kind of between the thoracic and the lower thoracic region and the lumbar region. So that is your T12 and your L3. Okay. Now your kidneys are partially protected by your floating ribs, but they're not totally protected by them. So just make sure that you know that. All right, we're going to go to slide 15. Okay. So the deep layer of your kidney is the renal medulla. So if you look at this diagram here, you see that the renal medulla is that inside part of the kidney. Okay. So that renal medulla, it contains those renal pyramids. Okay. So if you look at the diagram again, if you kind of look towards the bottom of the kidney, you will see the renal pyramids. Okay, we're going to keep going. There's quite a bit to cover. We're going to go to slide 19. Okay, so there's a lot to write down here. But the deep layer of the kidney, like we were saying, is the renal medulla, and it does contain those renal pyramids. Okay. The superficial layer of the kidney is the renal cortex, and that contains the renal corpuscles. Okay. So if you look here on your um, diagram, you'll see the renal cortex, and then you see it says the fibrous capsule is the same thing as the renal corpuscles. Okay, we're going to go into, we're going to talk about nephrons. There's quite a bit of information about nephrons. Okay, so um, the nephron is the functional units of the kidneys. Okay. Um, Also the pathway of urine. So there's a sequence, right? So the pathway of urine is your nephrons. That's first. Then it's the collecting ducts. Then it's your minor calces, your major calces, your renal pelvis, and then your ureter, which we're gonna learn about that as we keep going through the slides. Okay. But make sure you write that down, that the nephron is the functional unit of kidneys. And then your pathway of urine is your nephrons, your collecting ducts, your minor calces, your major calces, your renal pelvis, and then your ureter. Okay. Okay, so your nephron does consist of two parts. You've got your renal corpus and your renal tubules. Make sure you know that. Okay. Okay, so with you, part of your nephron, okay, is you've got the glomerulus, okay, and this is just a tuft of capillaries, so to speak, okay. And what happens is that as it leaves that glomerulus, the blood in the efferent glomerular arteriole will enter the peritubual capillaries, okay. So as it leaves the glomerulus, blood in the efferent glomerular arteriole will next enter the peritubular capillaries. Okay. Now, those nephron loops and those collecting ducts, those are surrounded by the vasa recta, which if you look at the diagram, you'll see it towards the middle. It kind of think of it as like a little cover over it. But those nephron loops and those collecting ducts, they are surrounded by that vasa recta. Okay, we're going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so still talking about nephrons, but the PCT, or your proximal convoluted tubule, um, nutrients are actively reabsorbed into the PCT. Okay. The PCT and the DCT, which is your distal convoluted tubule, those are surrounded by those peritubular capillaries. Okay. Um, and about 65% is tubular reabsorption. Okay, so the water can be reabsorbed at all regions of the nephron except the ascending limb of your nephron loop. So if you look here, you'll see your ascending and descending nephron loops. Okay, all right, we're going to keep going. We're going to go to 25. Okay. Going to totally mess up this word. I know I will, but the juxtamedullary nephrons, those are play a very important role in regulating your blood water content. So like I was saying earlier, your blood and your water content, it's essential for your circulatory system, obviously your urinary system. It plays in a lot of different systems in your body. Okay. But that juxtaglomeralular complex, when it detects a decrease in the glomerular filtration rate, it will secrete renin, which we're going to talk about here in a little while, to start that renin angiotensin mechanism. Okay. So make sure you write that down also. We're going to talk about what renin is in a few slides down. Okay. All right, we're going to go to, let's go to slide 28. Okay, so we just talked about the vasa recta. So that does surround the nephron loops and the collecting ducts within that renal medulla. Okay, so like I told you before, think of it as kind of like a little cover, so to speak. Okay, let's go to 31. Okay, so we're still talking about that juxtaglomerular complex. But the process of tubular secretion is when there's unwanted substances, they're moved from the blood to the tubular fluid. Okay. So that is just so that we can get that out of the body. Um, or it could be some getting out of the body and maybe some reabsorption. Okay. So let's go to 34. Okay. So your glomerular filtration, that's what moves your water and your solutes from the blood plasma into that glomerular capsule. Um, and the fluid within the capsule is called that glomerular filtrate. Okay. Um, but the fluid is kind of like changes names, and it'll go by tubular fluid after it passes into that renal tubule. Okay, so compared to plasma, the glomerular filtrate should have the same concentration of waste. Okay, because we're trying to make sure that we keep what? We have to make sure that homeostasis is always achieved within the body. Okay, we're going to go to 36. Okay. So I stopping here because I think this was a good place to kind of talk about this, but urine formation begins when the filtration moves some of the water and the solutes in your blood from the glomerulus into the glomerular capsule. Okay. So we're talking about urine, but the color of urine is due to the presence of that urochrome, which is part of the waste and the salutes and everything in it. Okay. All right. We're going to go to, I'm going to skip some slides, but we're going to go to 45. Okay. So Na plus, that is one of the um, minerals in the blood. Okay. So the Na is your what? It's your sodium. That is the most abundant positively charged ions in the extracellular fluid, which we've talked about, which is the fluid that surrounds what? It surrounds those cells. But your Na plus, that is the most abundant positively charged ions in that extracellular fluid. Okay, we're going to keep going. We're going to go to slide 50. Okay, so when we're talking about the glomerular filtrate, um, the renin is released because you've got some sympathetic stimulation, you've got drop in the blood pressure. If you remember when we talked about renin, that is something that the infants that they release, right? But protein will not appear in the glomerular filtrate under normal conditions. So if your body is in homeostasis, there should not be a dump of protein. Okay. Protein should not appear um, under your normal homeostasis conditions. Okay. All right. We're going to go to slide 54. Okay. Um, In the process of your tubular secretion, any substances that are unwanted, they're moved from the blood to that tubular fluid. Okay. But if you see here, it says 65% of your tubular fluid is reabsorbed. Okay. If there's any nutrients, it is very much actively reabsorbed. Okay. But the active reabsorption, it's is because of those positively charged ions. And that's the active reabsorption. Your passive reabsorption is because of the negative charged ions. Okay, so there's got to be like almost like a pressure that is against your blood plasma in order for this to happen by osmosis. Okay. All right, we're going to go to 59. Oop, I'm sorry, I can't go back, but let me real quick talk about slide 59. Um, your your Cl and your HCO3, they're both negative. Those are passively reabsorbed through the electrochemical attraction. That is moved by passive transport. Okay, so this the negative. Okay, um, your atrial natriuretic peptides, those inhibit the reabsorption of that sodium, which is the Na plus, in your kidneys. Okay, make sure you review slide 59. It won't let me go back with this for some reason, but just make sure that you look at that. Okay. With this particular slide 60, there's not a whole lot that I needed to really cover over 60, but let's go to 65. Okay. Characteristics of urine. Okay. So a healthy person should have pale yellow to light amber urine. Okay. That is due to the urochrome, which we talked about earlier. Okay. So your normal pH of your urine ranges from acidic to alkaline. Okay. That can vary with your diet. It can be a little bit more acidic, or it could be a little bit more alkaline, or it could be kind of a healthy balance of both. Okay. Um, if, well, let me go to the next slide and we'll talk about this. Okay. So, still talking about characteristics of urine, there are substances that should not be found in healthy urine. Okay, glucose is a big one. That is not normal, is abnormal. Proteins, we've already talked about this, that is not normal. Okay, blood in your urine, which is hemoglobin, not normal. Any kind of bile pigments, not normal. Okay, so these are all substances that should not be found. They're abnormal if they're in somebody with healthy urine. Okay, let's go to 68. Okay. So your pathway of urine, okay, make sure you write this down. The pathway of urine is your nephrons, your collecting ducts, your minor calces, your major calces, your renal pelvis, and your ureter. I know we've talked about this before, but I just want to make sure you guys have that stuff, okay? That is the pathway of urine. Okay, let's go to 70. Okay. So the urinary bladder and the urethra, okay? So the voluntary controlled external urethra sphincter, which is, if you look here, you can see it. If it is relaxed, then macturation occurs. Now, what is macturation? Some people say macturation, some people say micturation. What is that? That is urination. You are urinating, okay? So, the voluntarily controlled external urethral, sorry, sphincter, if that is relaxed, then urine or micturition occurs. Okay. Just wanted to make sure you guys knew about that. All right, let's go to slide 82. Okay. Um, so water and electrolyte balance, we've talked about this, is very important in your body because it you have to be balanced, right? You can't have too much liquid, you can't have not enough liquid. It has to be balanced, right? Um, so water is like a solvent of the body, where certain chemical reactions occur. Okay. So those electrolytes, um, those are substances that will create like these ions in the water because it dissolves. Okay. But the concentration of water in the blood is regulated by controlling the amount of water lost in the urine only. Okay, so the concentration of water in the blood is regulated by controlling the amount of water that's lost in the urine only. Okay, so we're going to continue, we're kind of continuing this conversation in the next slide. Okay, so your water intake is regulated by the thirst center, and that is in the hypothalamus. So please make sure that you know that, okay? So water intake is regulated by the thirst center within the hypothalamus, okay? What does that do? That creates an awareness of thirst that makes you want to do what? Drink water, drink fluids of some type, right? So your angio2, um, when there's an increase in your when there the angiotensin 2, when there's an increase in the glomerular filtration rate, that will um, that's part of your thirst, okay? But the angiotensin 2 actually stimulates your thirst, okay? Um, and those angiotensin converting enzymes, those will convert from angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2, okay? Okay, so here is the pathway of water loss. There's nothing that you really need to know. I just kind of wanted to show this to you. What should be lost through different things. Okay, so sweat, feces, skin, lungs, and then you see urine is the most. Okay, so let's go to slide 85. Okay. Um, so the volume of water lost in urine, it varies with what you've brought in, meaning your intake of water, right? So the urine formation begins when the filtration moves some of that water and the solutes in your blood from your glomerulus into your glomerular capsule. Okay, this we're talking about water and we're talking about blood and everything because everything works what together. All these systems are working together. Okay. We're going to go to slide 100. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the respiratory mechanism of this. Um, we talked about the respiratory system. Yes, it does go hand in hand with your urinary system. But the increase in the rate and depth of your breathing, it does cause a decrease in your blood CO2, which is your what? Carbon dioxide, right? So the increase in your rate and depth of breathing cause a decrease in your blood CO2 concentration and then an increase in your blood pH. Okay, so it's a it's a part of the exchanging of blood and oxygen, right? Also pH with the water balance, all of that has to be um, st- stable homeostasis. Okay. All right, we're gonna go. Actually, that is it, believe it or not, for this PowerPoint, please, guys, read your PowerPoints. I want you to read all of it. I'm really just trying to hit the points that you need to know for sure. But please read this. Go to your simple nursing. Review the urinary system. Also the amoeba sisters. They're really good to explaining things. I am in the process of getting your last chapter done. My hope is that I'll have it to you guys by today. If not, it'll be first thing tomorrow. So these chapters were a little bit more in depth than I anticipated them to be. So it's taken me a lot more time than I thought. But you guys have a good day, and I will see you guys Monday.